Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, December 16th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Tennessee game is in 5 days. The game against Michigan in 348 days. Tony Gerdeman and I recorded a bunch of listener question shows on the Buckeye Weekly podcast feed and recorded so many. We recorded 3 separate shows because you guys sent in so many great questions. We even had one that spilled over to this show. Looked at this one and thought, oh, we could absolutely talk about this for a full episode. A lot of interesting angles here. So we're going to start with a question from @David Hooser, and it is for Tony Gerdeman and me. Tony, welcome to the show. The question is, if Tony was the head coach and Tom was the OC, what would be your plan of attack against Tennessee this weekend? Tony, I turn to you and say, all right, boss, what do you want to do?
First of all, Tom, I need you to go get me a coffee. Then I'm going to ruminate.
Is it annual review time already? Wow. Feels like I just got my last excellent review.
You know, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you, Tom, find us a way to protect the passer and we'll win. And now that's with the understanding that the weather is going to cooperate. And I people may be tired of us talking about the weather, but I firmly believe that it is an issue and it is something that Ohio State is going to have to deal with and work on and improve on from the last time they were out in the elements. But from what we have seen this season from Tennessee, you can throw on them and you can throw on them downfield. You can, we've talked about Jermod McCoy. They're really good number 3 corner wearing number 3. He's like the one guy that you've really got to focus on and worry about. Everybody else I think can be had, but you got to let Will Howard, you got to give Will Howard some time. So I'm going to ask you, come up with some max protect, some things like that. Give Will Howard some time. And then also, where is my coffee?
Your coffee is getting cold, just like we all will be on Saturday night inside Ohio Stadium. Yeah, it is. I think that is where the offensive game plan has to start, is with the offensive line. And we talked about this on one of the other shows. My expectation is you're going to see the same offensive line against Tennessee that you did against Michigan, because that is the most veteran offensive line that they have, the most experienced offensive line that they have. It's not the one they would definitely choose in terms of, if you could choose anyone who was healthy at the start of the season, it's probably not exactly what they would go with, but it's the best option right now in terms of the most experience. And in an environment like this, you're probably going to go with the most experience. So let's just sort of stipulate that at the beginning. That's what we're basing this whole conversation on. The Ohio State run game, the Ohio State running backs have been pretty good in pass pro. Travion Henderson has been pretty good in pass pro this year. You have Will Kazmarek back, the tight end, who is the best blocking tight end they have on the team. You think that that's probably those guys are probably going to factor a lot into this, because Tennessee is strongest on the edges in terms of their defensive line. Both defensive ends have shown themselves to be pretty consistent pass rush threats. And, Donovan Jackson is still relatively new at tackle. So you're going to have to find a way to probably help him out to a certain degree. And you're going to have some, so that's probably where Will Kazmarek fits in. And then you're going to have Travion Henderson back there to help out a little bit with the, with picking up blitzes and that kind of stuff, because Tennessee will bring guys, they run a ton of stunts, twists, and bring guys from weird angles. You're going to need to have those guys back there to help out us to a certain degree. It can't happen every time. You can't just, because I will let you do the math, but that only leaves 2 guys to run routes if you're keeping 2 guys in to help protect. So that doesn't really work. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a ongoing process to figure out how they're going to handle all that stuff. I think I'm looking, Tony, at how are you going to get the ball out quickly? One of the best ways to help pass protect is to not have the offensive line have to pass protect very much. So get the ball out quickly from Will Howard's hands, get it to Carnell Tate in space, get it to Emeka Ibuka in space, get it to Jeremiah Smith in space. Just get the ball out, try and let them make a play, because we've seen, you mentioned Jermod McCoy, by far Tennessee's best corner. The other corners, just fine, but not unbeatable. And this is by far the best wide receiver unit that Tennessee is going to face. So I don't know how much they're going to be able to throw downfield given the conditions and the wind and all that kind of stuff. but it feels like if they can get the ball out quickly and just try and let guys do something in space, that's probably going to be their best option.
And I think some of that is also involving the running backs in the passing game. And we haven't really seen, I don't know, looking back over the 4 games that we've watched, I haven't necessarily seen Tennessee attacked in that way as much as maybe Ohio State can. And that, again, also, it would be a quick throw or your outlet throws, because the linebackers in coverage have not been fantastic. You don't really see them making plays. I think a safety against Travion Henderson, it could go either way, but we've seen Henderson make linebackers look silly, and so maybe that's a way to help the passing game out as well. And then, Tom, I also think, you know what, do that, but also crank up the tempo, and not all the time, but this is an area that consistently we have seen Tennessee have issues with, and getting lined up and getting the communication and getting where they need to be. And these are all opportunities for not just, nice 7-yard pickup. No, it could be a 70-yard pickup. These are opportunities to take advantage of Tennessee's defense not being set and not being exactly sure where they need to be. And if you can do that or create some penalties or whatever, tempo is essentially undefeated against Tennessee. And not that you can do it all the time, but when you pick the right time to do it, we have seen it have an impact against the Volunteers defense. Like, that's every time we see it, it's effective. Now, what happens if you do it more? Do you want to do it more? Do the conditions allow for you to do it more? Is the advantageous alignment that you have, you've got the personnel out there and James Pierce is on the bench. Like, okay, let's go now. Or there's a matchup that you don't like that is no longer on the field. And so, boom, let's keep it that way and keep Tennessee from subbing defensively. If they don't do tempo in this one, then it's as inexcusable as it was against Michigan.
Yeah, and they're not going to run tempo every play. I think everyone looks at that and goes, well, why don't you just run tempo every play? And it's because it's like throwing a changeup in baseball. If you throw it and you're mixing things up, it gets them off balance, gets the batter off balance, gets the defense off balance. If you're throwing nothing but changeups, then eventually you adjust to that. And yeah, you can get people off balance to a certain degree, but you're going to want to change your personnel at some point. You mentioned James Pierce there. That's one of their defensive ends. I don't think we actually said his name earlier, but James Pierce and Joshua Joseph's the 2 defensive ends that I did want to sort of shout out there. But yeah, you're exactly right. We've seen Alabama, Georgia, and Arkansas all use tempo at times with great success against Tennessee. And you said, as you said, you can trap their personnel on the field if you've got a good matchup. You can also, Tennessee will look to adjust once you're lined up. So a lot of times when teams catch Tennessee in, using tempo, you got the defensive lineman standing up, looking over to the sideline, and you snap the ball and like, boom, you're blowing people off the ball real quickly. That's something that you're not going to be able to do that every play. Guess what? They will figure that out at some point. They have some pretty smart coaches too. Tim Banks, the defensive coordinator, is one of the best in the nation, according to most folks who know these things. So, you're not going to be able to just do that constantly, but you have to use that. You have to, sprinkle some tempo in there from time to time. Pick up a first down. You're not going to do that necessarily at the very start of a drive. Pick up a first down or two, and then boom. Once you've been out there a little bit, you get into a little bit of rhythm. Then you go tempo and you catch them off guard at that point. The other thing that we've seen teams have a good deal of success with over the games that we've watched is at least the threat of the quarterback run, if not the quarterback run itself. I think you got to have Will Howard. You got to work Will Howard into the run game plan a decent amount, just because it gives you the +1 that Urban Meyer always talked about in the run game. It also forces Tennessee to defend more of the field. If you have the quarterback, you're showing a handoff inside to the running back, and then you have Howard going over the edge, or vice versa, off the edge, and then you also have maybe an RPO, a backside hitch or something attached to something like that. Boy, that really opens things up quite a bit in terms of forcing Tennessee to defend the whole field. Spread them out, make Will Howard an active part of the run game. That potentially opens up, it sets you up for success there, but it also opens up potentially other stuff elsewhere on the field.
Will Howard's high game this year is 28 yards rushing. I would not be surprised if he's well over that in this one. I think they need to be if they want to establish the running game. And if they do establish it with him as part of it, he could hit 50, 60 yards. And we're still waiting on that 70-yarder this year. Has not happened. It has happened in the past for him a few times. So he has that capability. We've seen it in practice in fall or in spring or summer, whenever, but haven't seen it here yet. But if he doesn't have over 28 yards rushing, then I'm not expecting the Ohio State running game to be that successful. But if he does have under and they are successful, then Ohio State wins this by a couple of scores, I think.
Yeah, I think that's, there's a bunch of different, like, if you tell me this, I will tell you what the game, what the game result is. Yeah, if he's an effective part of the run game, that tells you they have an effective run game, which tells you they're able to hang on to the ball, which tells you all of that stuff. I'm not expecting a real high scoring game here. This is one where if Ohio State can help protect its defense a little bit with some extended drives, keep the Tennessee defense on the field, all of that stuff will go a long way. The last thing I had is, how many targets do you want Jeremiah Smith to get? Because how many touches do you want Jeremiah Smith to get? Because you gotta throw the ball to the best player on the field, and obviously you can't just throw it to him 47 times. We saw Alabama try to do that with Ryan Williams during their game against Tennessee, and it didn't work because eventually, again, Tennessee's pretty smart. They figured it out that, hey, Ryan Williams is the only one that they seem to be throwing the ball to. You gotta you have other talented players on the field, but when you have one-on-one opportunities, you got to throw it up. When Ohio State has the wind, I would throw one up. I would stick Jeremiah Smith and just say, put him out wide, say, run a 9 route. Will Howard, you have the wind at your back. Try and outthrow him. Try and overthrow Jeremiah Smith. I don't think we've seen that this year other than the one at Penn State where he kind of lost the ball in the sun and stopped running. Other than that, we really have not seen Will Howard overthrow Jeremiah Smith. Go ahead and try. Take it as a personal challenge to overthrow Jeremiah Smith when you have the wind. But also, Tony, I think you can get him involved in the run game as well. We've seen him, take sort of end arounds a couple times. It worked for a touchdown against Michigan State. It didn't go quite as well against Northwestern, but I think they still picked up a short gain. But find other ways to get him the ball, whatever that might be. Get him the ball in space and just say, well, try and do something cool.
So you're saying when we talk to Will Howard, be like, did you hear Jeremiah Smith say you got a noodle arm? Totally dismissive of your arm strength, brother. That Ryan Williams, the Alabama game, he was targeted 19 times in that game, caught 8 passes for 73 yards. And the other amazing thing about that is that they were on him immediately, only 7 yards after the catch of all of those catches, of those 8 yards and those 19 targets, long of just 16 yards. Those are winning numbers all day long for Tennessee if they can do that. Now, I would expect better numbers if Jeremiah Smith is targeted 19 times. I'm not expecting that to happen. But what could also happen is something that happened in this game is, of the 239 yards receiving for Tennessee, 148 of them were after the catch. So they were making hay with the short passing game because there was so much focus on Ryan Williams. So if there's a ton of focus on Jeremiah Smith, then everybody else has to eat. Even though Jalen Milroe kept trying to feed Ryan Williams, it was everybody else getting the bulk of the yards in that one. And so if Tennessee wants to try to stop Jeremiah Smith, you have to let them and then go let everybody else eat.
Yeah, if they can't double everyone, as they say, and Ohio State does have probably a deeper and more talented wide receiver room than anyone that Tennessee has played this year. And how will the weather cooperate? We will all find out together on Saturday night. Really looking forward to this one. Should be a really, really good, exciting matchup. One of those games you've been waiting a generation for. Let's see what the SEC team coming up to Columbus, Ohio in December is going to look like. And there's a national championship potentially on the line for these teams as well, 4 games away from potentially winning the national title. It all starts Saturday night in the Horseshoe, 8 o'clock. We will be there. Tony, Kevin, and I there covering the team. We got Mark covering recruiting at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Got our whole team of X's and O's gurus there as well to make you a smarter football fan. Hope to see you there. Also hope to see you at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. We are going to have a ton of coverage this week. Interviews with players and coaches, all sorts of insight analysis. We'll have some of our X's and O's guys on some of these shows as well to break stuff down for you. All of that at BuckeyeHuddle.com and YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.